Welcome to Just Relationships, the show that offers you concrete ways to make your relationships better. Whether it's your boss, your spouse, your children, or your friends, the quality of your relationships in life directly affects how you feel about yourself and the success you achieve. Your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer, a psychotherapist, telecoach, author, and seminar leader, will interview top experts to help you learn to manage this essential part of your life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Duffy Spencer.
Greetings to you. Well, we hear a lot about heterosexuality, homosexuality. Hitherto, homosexuality has been considered deviant and wrong and bad and sinful. And there are certainly many people who believe that. And there are many people who don't believe that. And there has been a sea change in many Americans' views of homosexuality and the right for people to marry people whom they love. And there's been a softening of attitudes, again, from many people in the population. And so I think it's a wonderful idea to talk about this. And I am very happy to introduce to you my guest, Nancy Allen, who wrote a book entitled From Bud to Blossom, Our Lesbian Journeys. So welcome, Nancy.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful to see you. We get to see each other even though the radio audience doesn't. So From Bud to Blossom, Our Lesbian Journeys. And Nancy, you wrote it with several other women who had changed from a heterosexual lifestyle to a homosexual, lesbian lifestyle. And tell us why it was so important for you to write this book.
Well, over the years, I just talked to a lot of people, and including myself, and noticed that I had lesbian friends along the way, and then some of them got into it really early, and others, like me, I didn't officially declare myself until age 72. I wanted to make sure before I came out anyway.
Yes, you wanted to make really sure, yes.
I wanted to make really sure. So then once I was really sure, I began interviewing other women that had a previous well-established heterosexual relationship and perhaps children. And then at some point along the way, none of them waited until age 72, but somewhere along the way, they started into a lesbian relationship and still have one. So, so that was just kind of fun to kind of pick out people that had interesting stories. I was going to title it Late in Life Lesbians, but then I met younger people, and especially one young couple in the book that both of them had babies by the same sperm donor a year apart. And I thought, well, that was a fascinating story. So I changed the name of the book to be more inclusive. So
to be more inclusive, and it's all about inclusivity. Mm-hmm. Yes. So, and I love the title From Bud to Blossom. And I do want to make mention that Kinsey in the 50s talked about bisexuality as being a universal for human beings. Mm-hmm. And that we all are somewhere on the continuum.
Right.
And that you talk about, it's not about the penis, it's about love. And we hear about, first of all, human beings need attachments. We form attachments. We need to love. We need to connect. And so when you hear about all women together in a prison, they form romantic sexual relationships. Mm-hmm. as do men. I don't know the statistics on that. I don't know how many of them do, but it's a human condition to want to attach. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I want to hear your story first, and then of course the other stories that you've written about. So what your situation was, okay, and how much you you agree? I saw you. The audience didn't see you nodding yes when I talked about Kinsey and bisexuality and all of us being on a sexual continuum. So what's your take on that?
Well, I thought the Kinsey study was fascinating, and I've just noticed over the years that there's people that are totally into their heterosexuality and could not be persuaded no matter what. And other people that are born gay, and then from the start never vary from that. And even though their parents try to change them. And then there's some people in the middle, like I am, that could go either way. But I didn't know that for years because I didn't even know about lesbians. I grew up a long time ago, because now I'm 82, so that was a long time ago. And I don't even remember in college talking about lesbians. Now, I knew men that were gay men, because they used to make fun of them in high school, but I didn't know about gay women. So I was, I don't know, in my 20s somewhere before I even became aware of lesbians.
Yes, good point, Nancy Allen, author of From Bud to Blossom. So much of this has been hidden and secret because it's been considered deviant, wrong, sinful by some people. And the idea of coming out and saying, this is who I am, is so difficult. There's so much shame involved. And did you have stirrings early on? Or fairly early on?
No, at age 40, I was going through a divorce, and I was working at a retirement community, we were running a daycare center for the elderly. They'd come in from the community. And anyway, I had a boss, and she said, now that you're going through a divorce, why don't you consider becoming a lesbian? And I went, huh? Do people consider that? So that was my first inkling that I could be gay, but I just thought that she was slightly crazy. But then I began to think about it, and I had some lesbian friends and began to talk about it. So, yeah. And, she had a husband and a child that she was thrilled with, but yet she was attracted to me that I didn't know about. She took me off on a retreat weekend where there were supposed to be other women, but the other women magically did not appear. And wow. I was with her where we embarked upon a sexual relationship. So that was the beginning.
That was the beginning. So you were introduced to it that way. Mm-hmm. Have you ever come across the term political lesbian?
No, I haven't. Tell me.
Yeah, it's a very I think it's a very important term because as you open the show with the idea of kind of a decision that I don't know the statistics on this, and I don't even know if there are stats on this. But I'm sorry, go back. There are plenty of stats on the number of single women to a number of single men. Okay. So because women tend to live longer than men, so we have many more widows than widowers. And there is just sheer numbers of a whole pool of single women looking for love. Mm-hmm. And there are, let's just say, 10 women to every one man. And it always occurred to me that why look for that one man in the crowd when you can just look next door to, not next door, but close by to beautiful, intelligent, smart, attractive women. And because in my view and in your view from reading your book, Nancy, it's all about love. It's right. All about love.
Right.
So why not love? And so the term political lesbian means you could certainly love a man, and you can be inclusive and consider loving a woman if you want love in your life and you find a lot of attractive women and not very many available attractive men.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's what it really hit me with, because it was so politically not correct. And
Yes.
I'm a person that's kind of out there, and I talk about my life, and I've been in the speaking, training, coaching business for years, and I wanted to be authentic. So I thought, well, as long as I have a choice, why pursue women when, I've had success with men, and I will just continue doing that. Well, I finally ran out of men because as I got older, they're older, and the older men, if they were at all attractive, are wanting to date women who are 20, 30, 40 years younger than they are. So
Yes.
I showed them, I got myself a younger, beautiful woman. So
Yes.
Kelly's 15 years younger, but I met her way back when I was in my 40s, because at that retirement community, I had a lesbian friend there, and Kelly was her partner. So she introduced me to Kelly, and Kelly was really cute. And Kelly began flirting with me for some reason way back then. And I kept thinking, no, but I'm not a lesbian.
Yes.
So we were kind of friends for years. And then every time I would get together with her, she would flirt with me. And I thought, why not? She's cute. She's available. She's fun to be with. So I gave it up. And especially 10 years ago, it was getting to be more acceptable. And I think it's continuing, but there's certainly been a rallying, too, of it coming back again to haunt people. But I'm just always amazed at the traditional religions that don't support love, because that's what it's all about.
It's what it's all about. And I do want to add that to the hopper, Nancy, the idea that not only are there many more single women, especially later on in life, but that men so often, and that's another cultural norm, choose younger women to keep their seniority established when they're younger, and then later on, because there are so few men available, they want younger women, and they get them. They're able to get them. So you put those two demographics together, and you find, again, why not?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so much in that why not,
right,
Nancy.
And I found that men were also a lot of work, too, because most of the time they have high ego needs and expect a woman to be subservient. And I'm not subservient, so, I got kind of tired of that.
Right. And we're looking at the literature on feminism that, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the author's name, but she talked about the fact that men don't feel needy. Why? Because women not only want to please them and fill their needs, but they actually anticipate their needs, so that they're never not in that framework of not getting their needs met. And it really is quite astonishing how that happens. So there are two aspects here. There is the sexual aspect of actually having sex with someone of the same gender, and then there is the compatibility with understanding someone from the same gender better.
Right.
So yeah. So what
and
is
it doesn't, as you said in my book, I say it's the relationship. It's not the man or the penis. It's the relationship that you build. And if you can have a better relationship with a woman, why not? And I said to women, you don't have to go to sleep with this person. If you want to have a partnership or want to live together as roommates or whatever, why not? And some people are real edgy about that. Oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to be perceived as a lesbian. Heaven forbid.
Right. So there's so much here, because at 40, you had a love affair with Kelly. With your initial boss. And then...
my boss was a woman.
Yes, right. And then it took you 32 years to come out. So
right. Plus then along the way, I thought, well, why don't I try women out? And it just takes the special woman, because none of those women, I thought, it's the person, not the penis, not the anatomy. So just getting to the right woman was a journey.
Yes, and I don't know, as I was saying earlier, these are other stats. I don't know if there are statistics on heterosexual women who decide a lesbian lifestyle. But I know anecdotally of many, many lesbians who have children, who've had decades of a heterosexual lifestyle. And maybe, in their later years, they either saw the light for themselves or some of the other factors involved that we talked about, whatever it is. But there's, again, a lot of anecdotal evidence that this is not so rare.
Right. See, I didn't have trouble finding these 9 other women for my book. Each of us wrote a chapter. There's 10 chapters in the book. And each of us wrote a chapter about our life and how it started and then how we got into a lesbian relationship. Some of us slower than others.
Some of you slower than others.
Most of the time, it was kind of a surprise, like, oh, I didn't even consider this. Oh, this will work.
I didn't even consider it.
Yeah.
So which aspect would you like to focus on right now? The good news is that we have a part 2 that Nancy Allen, author of From Bud to Blossom, Our Lesbian Journeys, about personal stories of women who all of the women have moved from heterosexuality to a homosexual lesbian lifestyle. And their stories are varied and fascinating. The idea of a certain kind of sexual behavior that not many men are interested in. Some men are, some men aren't. Cunnilingus. That's an issue for many heterosexual relationships. Whereas for lesbians, that's the norm. That's one of the things that you do to have sexual arousal. So yeah, that's the whole issue of foreplay and slam bang, thank you, ma'am, versus for lesbians, pretty much what we think of as foreplay is the play.
Right.
Is the play. So that in itself, yeah.
And you don't have to have oral sex. I'm not a fan of oral sex. So that was one of the things that I said to Kelly early on. It's like, no, anything else will be just fine.
Yes.
Use of vibrators, just being together and looking into each other's eyes and feeling the feelings that sex brings is, for me, what it's all about. Plus, I had a husband along the way that wasn't real sexual, and he really couldn't keep it up. So I was married to him for 10 years. So I had women type sex for those 10 years. He was very into satisfying me, but not with his penis. So I got into it really early like that. It's like, okay, that happens. And with the men that I dated, there were a few that could keep it up, but most of them, after a certain age, it became hard, and that was before Viagra. So, I got into women type sex relatively early.
That's an interesting term, women type sex, because when we look at older heterosexuals, that the Viagra can go and the Cialis can go just so far after a while, and certainly penile implants has become a quite common surgery.
Really?
Yes,
I didn't know that.
it is covered by insurance.
Oh wow!
Isn't that fascinating?
Isn't that fascinating?
So, yes, that's another route to go.
Okay.
But non-coital sex is certainly excellent for older heterosexuals rather than no sex. But so many people, more men than women, are so coitus focused that they can't even conceive of sex without coitus.
Right.
So
what I noticed about men, even though they couldn't keep it up, that they still had desire. They felt bad because their desire was so strong, but yet couldn't really maintain an erection.
Right. The desire and the should, right, Nancy? The should. I should be able to have an erection and sustain an erection. And I'm not a man if I'm not.
And many of them think that that's where women get satisfaction, but I didn't get satisfaction from. It was nice. I felt the connection, but as far as having an orgasm, I never had an orgasm with a penis.
Yeah, and I think that's very important to make note of, because Freud talked about this in his time, and he actually said there are two kinds of orgasms. There are clitoral orgasms and vaginal orgasms.
Yep.
And immature women have clitoral orgasms, and mature women have vaginal orgasms.
Well, I never matured.
Yes, exactly.
That's the problem. I'm still too young.
Yeah, exactly. And talk about making women aberrant when in actually the clitoris, the equivalent of the male penis, is the executive of orgasm, and that's where it starts. And there are vaginal contractions, but that the executive is the clitoris. So, but to frame it as mature versus immature,
right,
is about being culture bound.
Tell him that in his afterlife he needs to rewrite his philosophy, because
yes,
he was not right.
Right, he was definitely not right. And how many people believed him? The power of culture. So as we talked about already, culture is changing, and of course our culture currently is quite polarized. So do you want me to ask you another question, or do you just want to talk a little bit more about your own experience and or other women's experiences?
Well, I can talk about my own. I had two marriages, and I was just totally dedicated. I was an only child, so I was just totally dedicated to having a family, because I had a very lonely life as an only child. And I thought, I will never do that to a child. I will have children. So I had two children with my first husband. I was a home ec major, so I was totally devoted to cleaning the house, cooking the meals, doing all the domestic activities, because that was my life. So the novelty kind of wore off after a while of that. And I went to the Gestalt Institute in Cleveland, which is an institute for therapists that to expand their abilities. And at the time, I was pursuing a master's degree in counseling, so I thought the Gestalt Institute would be good. Well, it was huge personal growth for me. So after 2 years there, I said to this husband, goodbye. But it was a 13-year marriage. I didn't give up real easy. But I realized that it really wasn't what I wanted for the rest of my life. He was very narrow. When we first moved into this house, I said, in 5 years or so, can we move into another house? Because this was a duplex, which was good financially. And he said yes at the time. Then 5 years later, I said, it's time to move. He said, oh, no, I'm never moving from this house. So I began visualizing myself being in this house forever. So, so anyway.
It seemed like a prison, right? Like a prison.
Well, several things like that led me to divorce him. But it was hard on the children. They were 9, 12. Anyway, we divorced, and I did the little testing things with the lesbian, but I didn't see any future in that. So then I got married again, and the second husband was totally different in the first one, in that he was more flamboyant. He had made a good living, and expected me to bring in a good living, which was kind of a sore point. But anyway, I never quite fulfilled his expectations. He thought I should make as much money as he was, and at the time he was making like $100,000 a year, and I kept thinking, isn't that enough? Can I just play? Anyway, he wasn't in for me playing. So that marriage lasted 10 years, and he had a daughter, which she was young, so she was like 3 years old, and my children were like 10 and 13. Anyway, we did the best. I got to travel a lot with him. There was just lots of positives with both husbands. But then I left him. So both times I was the initiator of the downfall of the marriage. So neither husband was terribly happy with that. And I felt a lot of guilt about that, because I thought, why am I doing this? But I now know, in retrospect, I have the life I have now. If I hadn't made those decisions, I wouldn't have the life I have now. So for like 20 years, I didn't really have a solid relationship or partnership where I lived with anyone. I dated a lot,
Yeah.
men and, those few women to kind of try.
Right.
But then I remembered Kelly from those early days and how cute she was. And so at some point, both of us were free. So I said, let's embark upon what I called a friending relationship where we were just friends. So for about a year, we went to the movies together. We ate, we talked, but we didn't necessarily talk about partnerships or, being together. So at the end of that year, I kind of said to her, well, maybe we should move our relationship to the next level. And she gets, the next level, you're straight.
Yeah.
I didn't think you would ever cross over. I said, well, let's try it out. So we did. And it took, that was in 2012. We decided to have a commitment ceremony since gay marriage was not legal. We had a commitment ceremony in 2014. And then, 6 months later, gay marriage became legal. But anyway, we had a big commitment ceremony. People came from all over. And we had the dog as a ring bearer. And my family was there from Michigan. And her family was there from Florida. They came to Georgia. And anyway, we had this big, big ceremony. And then gay marriage became legal 6 months later. We said, we already did that marriage. We already did the commitment. So 2 years ago, 2019, we decided to officially get married. Based on principle, and she said, yes. I've never really been married. So anyway, she proposed to me. She got down on one knee, and we had just been to our financial advisor, who said it would be in our best interest to be married because if she dies first, I would get a lot of money from her Social Security. So she got down on one knee and proposed to me about all the love and connection and all the wonderful things that you say during an engagement. And she said, and Nancy, you would get my money from Social Security. So
how cool!
I said, what a deal!
How cool is that? Yeah, and why shouldn't lesbians and gays be entitled to the kind of protection that heterosexual people are?
Right.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, and I just want to point out there's a lovely term. I'm straight, but I'm not narrow.
Oh, that's cute.
Isn't that interesting?
That's cute.
That people can choose, say, I'm a heterosexual, I'm quote unquote straight, but I'm not narrow. And I love that term, that expression.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah. And that I can be open to all different ways of loving and not have to deviantize any of them. Yes. So it wasn't, and this is what other friends of mine who led a heterosexual lifestyle, married children, have a lesbian marriage or commitment now, have said, it was the person. It was the person. So that's it was a person that I chose.
Right.
So on that note, Nancy Allen, on our show, we've done. It flew by, and the good news, so the good news for everyone is that Nancy is coming back next week for part 2 of her lesbian journey and journeys that she's written about from other women. Nancy Allen, Allen, from bud to blossom. And this is Dr. Duffy Spencer saying goodbye for now and wishing you great relationships.